So the topic is Basics of Writing a Scientific Manuscript for Publication. Let me start with a statement quoted from the book How to Write a Lot, a Practical Guide to Productive Academic Writing by Paul Sylvia. I quote, "It's easier to embalm the dead than to write an article about it," unquote. So as we know that to do something, what we are habitually doing, or maybe by practice we have learned doing something, it is very easy to carry out the particular work. But when we have to note down the entire process in writing and publish it, it becomes difficult. So that is a case in all such kind of publications or write-ups. It is not only associated with the scientific writing, but also any kind of write-up when you prepare. Knowing things is one, and preparing something for publication so that it becomes understandable and comprehensive for the readers, it is a great challenge. So always it is better to keep a target for writing. We must have to set a deadline, and somehow we should start writing. Many times we see that it's very difficult to start writing, but once we start with, then the flow will come automatically and you can finish in time. So the starting process is the most difficult part unless you have a rigid writing schedule or a deadline for you. And most of the people would like to start writing by beginning either in the very morning, early morning, after you get up, because that time we remain fresh and our brain is also remaining fresh. But of course, that depends upon the person concerned. So variability may be there in choosing the appropriate time for starting writing. Now, in case of writing a research article, the best approach is to first start with making an outline. Without going into writing chapter-wise or section-wise, as it will appear in the publication, it is better to gather the information as required for writing the different sections of the paper and making a broad outline at the beginning. So
Yes.
outline will form a structure for your paper, and it will help generate ideas and formulate hypotheses. So the outline should include the following points. Number one, we should write out on a paper and decide about the topic. So topic may be chosen according to the particular work that you have conducted, because writing will start only after completion of the particular work. So you know whatever you have done, what is the aim of your paper, and what you are going to showcase through your publication. So the topic should reflect the overall aim and objective of the paper and what we are going to showcase through the publication. So that should be reflected well. So it should be concise and not very long. And we should not use very complex sentences, and try to make it shorter and comprehensive. Second is, why is this topic important? The significance or importance of the topic can be highlighted only when we know the background information of the particular area of research. So as we all know, before starting a research, we must have to find out the gaps in understanding on a particular subject or an area of research. So unless we do a very extensive review and study the publications already different authors have published in different journals on the particular topic, we will not be able to understand what is the gap in research, what are the unanswered questions. And if we can successfully identify the gap in understanding in the particular subject, then we can very well design the experiment and also decide about the particular objectives with which we'll be starting the research. I think as you have already completed the research before writing, you know what is the gap in research, and you also know what were the objectives, and therefore writing the importance or significance of your area of work is not very difficult for you. Then in the background of your write-up, in the introduction section, it is always better to also highlight the hypothesis on which you have conducted the research. I think I did not highlight what is a hypothesis, but let me tell you briefly that a hypothesis is the core of the research work, or it is the particular, so to say, question based on which you design the particular experiment or research. So a hypothesis can be developed based on our understanding of the particular subject through review, and also by observing or doing observations in population, or in case of health research on patients, or retrospectively on the data that is available from the hospital. So certain observations may be arrived there, and based on those observations, we can formulate the hypothesis. I'm not going to detail about that, but let me give an example so that it becomes more clear. Say, for example, in a particular community, if you see that a particular disease is highly prevalent compared to other communities around them, or maybe in the same location or geographical area, then you may always think that there will be some association of certain factors with the higher incidence or prevalence of the disease in that particular ethnic group or the population. So through your observation, you might have found out some peculiarity in the lifestyle of that particular community or population, or maybe in the food habit, or maybe in the social behavior and the community behavior, and that may be correlated with the higher incidence or prevalence of the disease in the population. So that can be the hypothesis. That is, based on your observation, you can expect that X or Y behavior, food habit, or social, so to say, issue may be related to the higher prevalence of the disease. So that is the hypothesis. Now, objectives are to be formulated in such a way so that we can either prove or disprove the hypothesis. That means finally we can establish whether that particular factor is really the predisposing factor for occurrence of that particular malady or disease in the population. Then the next point in the outline should be to be included is the results which can be generated through the particular research work. So they must have to be classified and categorized well so that you can make some visuals out of it. So raw data will not be sufficient. So based on the raw data, maybe mean tables of different parameters can be found out. Their statistical analysis can be done based on the particular mean data. You can have some figures like graphical presentations, or maybe you can develop some equations or formulation based on statistical or mathematical modeling of the results. So these are the visuals or illustrations that are to be prepared well by, if necessary, taking help of statistical calculations, mathematical models, and graphical presentations. If necessary, we may take the help of the online and offline tools, which can also give you the proper idea how to produce these visuals. The next is, what are my salient findings? That is the most important part of the outline, because based on the output of your research, based on the results that you have classified and categorized, you can always choose the salient findings of your result. What should be highlighted through your paper? And you also should think over and write down what does the salient findings indicate? What do the salient findings indicate? That means, what are the indications that we obtain out of the findings of your research, and how it differs from others? If it differs from others, why it differs from others? What are the reasoning or justification by which you can establish that your observations are correct, although these observations are not exactly same as that of others? So all these things are to be written very comprehensively and very briefly in the outline, and there will be enough time later on to explain and expand them while ultimately drafting the paper in the proper format. Then, after having the outline, before expanding it, you must have to know what are the different aspects of the research output that are to be included in different sections of the publication. If it is a research article to be published, then the major sections are introduction, materials and methods, results, discussion, and conclusion. Now, in introduction, it is always better to first start with the relevance of the particular research. That means you need to justify why you have chosen that particular topic. What is the importance of the topic? And that can be explained only when you have a very good review and you can narrate briefly the, say for example, the overall overview of the particular research work in the particular area, and then you need to explain what are the gaps in understanding in this particular area of research. And based on that, you need to explain or justify the importance of the research work that you have conducted and you are narrating through the paper. Then second point to be included is what is known about the topic so far. As I said, that a good review will give you enough information to briefly describe the knowledge and skill in the particular area which has been already known and published elsewhere. Then, as I said, you need to highlight the gaps in knowledge, and then you are to also mention the hypothesis of your research in the introduction. And based on the hypothesis, what are the objectives that you have already decided for carrying out the research? That should also be mentioned in the introduction. Then in the materials and method, there are description of the sources of the materials that you have collected and the type and nature of materials that you have collected. That means the sample that you have used for your research work as well as the sampling strategy are to be mentioned clearly so that similar kind of research can be repeated in future by other workers. So materials and method needs to be so to say made up in such a way that nothing remains hidden or nothing remains unexplained in terms of the strategy of research that you have done and also the materials and the methods that you have followed. It is also important to explain about the subjects of your study. Who were the subjects of your study? And at that point of time, you must have to define the case and also mention about the inclusion and exclusion criteria, because there may be many confounding factors that may be associated with the particular effect on the parameter that you are studying. But if your focus is on finding the effect of a particular treatment through your research, then other confounding factors are to be negated by excluding those factors before deciding about the samples. So sampling strategy and inclusion and exclusion factors should be described properly so that you can limit or if possible eliminate all the confounding factors which may affect on the output of your research other than that which is desired. Then you need to mention what was the design of your research. While designing the research, always it is important to mention, if possible, the way you collected the samples. The samples should be representative and that should be sufficient in number and nature so that it can really represent the particular subjects of the investigation and also the particular community or population that on which you are doing the research. And design of research is also related to the statistical methods that will be applied for data analysis after getting the output. Say for example, as you know, there are many statistical methods like CRD, RBD, factorial design, and other sorts of statistical models by which you can analyze the data of a research finding. And if you want to apply such kind of statistical applications, always it is expected that the data is collected in the fashion that is required. If you arbitrarily collect it, then that may not fit to the particular statistical format in which you want to analyze the result. So as we know from the design of experiments in statistics, three things are to be remembered while designing the research. Number one is replication. That means you need to have replicates of the samples representing the population. Second one is randomization. That means you should not have any bias in collecting the samples, and therefore inclusion and exclusion criteria should be defined well. The case should be defined well. And the third one is the local control. That means limiting the confounding factors or other factors which may influence on the result. So these are the three principles of experimental design that needs to be understood and followed, so that we can analyze by using different statistical methods and get some interpretation which is valid and justifiable. Then also you should mention in the evaluation method the procedures that you follow, including the related references. Normally, most of the people used to start writing a paper with the materialization method. And in my case also it is the same, because materialization method, if you start with while writing the paper, it becomes easier to start. Why? Because in materialization method, you need not put anything on your own. Just you are mentioning what are the materials that you have collected and what methods that you have followed. The methods that you have followed by getting the protocol or the procedure downloaded from certain papers which have been already published. That means there your contribution in materialization method is very minimum. Most of the things that we will be mentioning in the materialization method are borrowed from others. And therefore, it is easy to write the materialization method. And hence, most of the authors find it easy to start with writing materialization method first. It is also the same while writing a dissertation or thesis. So I also always advocate my students to start with materialization method, then review of literature, then results, then discussion, then at last he can write the introduction, because introduction is already known. All the parts are already known to him. Second point, it is important to remember that since you have all the notes, then probably it will not be problematic for you to describe the experimental design and procedures in the materialization method. But while writing materialization method, as I already mentioned, the methods should be as explicit as possible. And as we say, that there is no any scope of using etc. in describing the samples or methods in materialization method. All details up to the last content should be described. Say, for example, I cannot say that for this particular experiment, we collected different types of samples like, say, saliva, pus, blood, etc. So that is not acceptable. Up to the last type of sample, nature of sample, you need to describe. Similarly, all procedures are to be described in such a way that can be repeated by some other workers. It should be reproducible. Say, for example, if I write about a certification process which was used as a part of the protocol for a particular method, if I write bacteria were pelleted by centrifugation, it is not a complete description. I should have written bacteria were pelleted by centrifugation at 3000 G for 15 minutes at 25 degrees Celsius. That means because centrifugation is dependent upon the RPM, revolution per minute, as well as the time, as well as temperature. So this should be specified so that it can be reproducible. So if your method that you have adopted has been already published and well known, you need not have to worry much. Only thing is that you have to cite the reference well. In the proper format, you have to cite the literature. Nothing more than that. You need not explain. And if necessary, in some publications, in some journals, they prefer to write even the published methods, briefly making a statement in 2 to 3 lines, if it is already a published method or protocol. But if you have modified the protocol either partially or completely, then you must have to mention in detail what modifications that you have brought about to the particular protocol. You need to describe every step so that it can be repeated by others. Similarly, if you are developing your own method for the particular research, or you are trying to establish or standardize a method for a particular job, then you need to always write in detail about the method. Then cohesion and fluency in writing is very important issue in this section. It should be clearly comprehensible and understandable. Many times we find that because clarity is not there in Manuscript method, while pursuing a particular method already described in a published paper, many students fail to get the kind of results they expected because the explanation given in the Manuscript method in the paper was not appropriate. Many hidden facts were not mentioned. That's why the final reproduction or repetition of the process was not possible. And nowadays it becomes very interesting and important also in molecular studies. Say, for example, for most of the molecular study like PCR and its variants, we need to mention the PCR primers. So PCR primers are described only in terms of certain mentioning about the length of the nucleotide sequence, ATGC sequence. These are only alphabets only. If by mistake one alphabet is missed in the primer sequence, then the entire primer will be wrong. And the person may replicate the particular experiment with the primers that have been published, but he will always get negative result with that kind of primer if only one single alphabet is missing from the primer sequence. So therefore, writing the material method should be very, very precise, and it should be very precise, and it should be very correct and explained well. Expression in passive voice is always preferred by most of the journals. And this is a common principle of writing any research publication or report. It is better to use past tense as well as passive voice. But nowadays, many of the coveted journals accept if we make a reference in active voice, if we use I and we, no problem. We can use it if it is allowed in a particular journal. But repeatedly using we or I in a paragraph makes it little not attractive for the readers. It sounds disruptive. And therefore, it is always better to use past tense and passive voice. Past tense, because already you have completed the work, then you are publishing. There should not be a mixture of past and present tense. These are small things, but it is very important so that the paper becomes, so to say, acceptable for the reviewers. Because there are several mistakes in the punctuation, grammatical, and typographic errors. Usually, it will distract the reviewer, and in the first go, the reviewer will reject it. There is likelihood. So we should be very careful about that. Then the results section. In results, first of all, if you have already prepared in the outline the visuals out of your salient findings, then it becomes easier for you to write the result. So based on the mean tables, based on the graphical presentations, photographs, illustrations, and other statistical data, you can start writing the results. So tables and graphs should be given only when necessary. When there are only references to very few, so to say, data, then you need not put it in the table. You can write it in text. But if there are several data, several variables at different time points, then it is better to show tables. Similarly, in graphical presentation also, usually a new researcher makes a mistake that what type of graph is most representative for the kind of data that I have. That has to be cited very well. Say, for example, for a temporal gradient in a particular data sample, say, for example, increasing weight of the subjects at different point of time, or increasing incidence of a disease in a population at different points of time, or different season, or different years. These are called temporal variation. Temporal variation means timely variation. And these temporal variation or that kind of trend should be better expressed by using the line diagram rather than using histogram or bar diagram. But if they are discrete data pertaining to mean levels in particular population or many populations, showing the variations between populations or variation between years or seasons, then the bar diagram or the histogram may be good. But bar diagram is better than histogram. Histogram is applicable only when the data are linked together. Then you need to therefore consult the statistician if necessary to have the statistical calculation of the tables as well as the graphical presentations. And many a time we see that statistical analysis is done based on the means. It is always appropriate to go back to the raw data before discussing with the statistician, and the statistical analysis based on the raw data, categorized and classified, should be better representative of the data. So rather than making it from mean table only. Then describe the salient findings in text too. So it is very important. Many a times we see that a writer used to provide a very good table or graphical presentation, but no point which is evident from the table or the graph are described in text. This is not appropriate. So the salient points that is depicted by the tables or graphs should also find a place in the text, in the writing in result section. So we must have to stress them by writing in text. Again, you should not think that it has been already included in tables, so why should I write it again? It should be explained in text. Then also you should include the supporting results. In some of the journals, they may also allow you to include supporting results in the result section itself by allowing you to include as many tables as you can in the particular presentation. Some of these journals may allow it, but otherwise, in most of the journals nowadays, they do not like to extend one single publication for several pages. So they will limit the number of tables to be included. And therefore, in that case, other supporting data, which are related to the significant findings, but not exactly reflected in the text in result, may be provided as a supporting table. And that should come as a supplementary table and graph. So many of the open access journals, which are not print journals, they are mostly online journals, they normally allow incorporating supplementary tables and graphs additionally in the journal publication. So writing research section, result section should get top priority in terms of your attention, because anybody who is interested to read your paper will be interested to know your results only. So invariably, therefore, the reviewers also are likely to read the result section in detail, even word by word, sentence by sentence, and they will try to find out what are the key findings of your result and whether the findings have been in accordance to the known facts already published, or there are some deviations, or there are some new results coming up, novelties are there, and how they are being explained in the discussion section later. So results should be organized into different segments or subsections if necessary. Rather than writing as a very long narration in text, it is always better to use headings and subheadings. So according to the parameters that you have studied, it is always better to make different subheads within the result section so that it becomes more comprehensible and easily readable by the readers. So you should also mention in the results, while describing a particular parameter, initially, what was the purpose of the experiment, what was your experimental approach, very briefly, and then the data in text and visuals. And also you should write the data commentary. That means your overall salient observation based on the tables and figures that you have made. So salient findings are to be also given as a commentary in text. So data commentary will explain a meaningful summary of the data. As I already said, it need not be very long, but most significant findings should be given in the summary of the data pertaining to a particular table, and that should give an explanation to the salient findings. So result section should not include any interpretation of data, because that is usually included in the discussion. So in some of the research journals, usually they combine both results and discussion together. And in that case, alongside these results on a particular parameter, we may also continue with the discussion. so that it becomes more comprehensible. But in most of the coveted journals, usually they keep results and discussion sections differently. And in that case, no interpretation or discussion should be made while presenting the results. And if necessary, in the discussion section, salient points of results may be again repeated if discussion is a separate section. So you should be selective in presenting data and choose only those experimental details that are essential for the reader to understand your findings. So unnecessarily, you should not include the raw data or many tables which are not necessarily important for explaining the salient findings of your results. So you need to distinguish your results from your data. Data is not the result. So based on the data, after classification and categorization, and then properly converting it to visuals like table and graph, you should include it in the result section. Then comes discussion and conclusions. Many a time in many journals, discussion and conclusions are two different sections, but in most of the journals, this conclusion comes towards the end of the discussion only as a single paragraph or one or two paragraphs, briefly. So in discussion, we should again mention major findings of our study. We should not think that it has been already stated in the results. Why should I repeat it again? Major findings, very briefly, should be repeated at the beginning of the discussion, so that based on that, you can start discussing the salient results. So whether your findings are in agreement with previous workers or they contradict to the reports of previous workers, that should be observed appropriately by referring to the reviews collected. So when you have reviewed the literature, you can find out very easily the similar results which have been published by other workers if they are in agreement with your findings. And you may also find some results already published in other journals which may not be same as that of your experiment. So they may be contradictory. So many students, when they start with writing a paper or doing a research work, find it difficult to justify the contradiction of his or her finding with the already known findings. So, and that time, many times we have seen that a new scholar has a tendency to just, you can say, just rationalize his findings by making manipulation. Data manipulation may be done by students so as to show an agreement with the previous worker's findings. So this is not actually acceptable or advisable, because anything that has come up out of your experiment, if the experiment is done judiciously, honestly, and by following precise methods, we should not worry whether our outcomes or outputs are similar to other workers or not. If it is contradictory, we should try to justify them. So justification may be found in the literature itself, because many other workers may be also discussing what are the other observations that may be there, what are the limitations of the previous work, and from that you can find out the reason for contradictory findings of your work. Or if it is not supported by literature, you should yourself try to reason it. You should try to justify why you have come up with these contradictory results. So, but novelty should not be neglected. Sometimes novelty that you find through your outputs of your results may be a new beginning of understanding of a particular subject. And that may be very, very important, so to say, turning point in understanding that particular subject. So your findings may be accepted widely, and it may also ultimately happen that you may be selected for an award for a new finding which was not known earlier. It is quite away from the understanding that we had earlier. So most of the discoveries are coming from that kind of out-of-box thinking and finding some novel results which were not expected. And many times the results may be accidental, and that may be the basis of a new finding. Then you should justify your findings, as I say, with the agreement with other workers or by giving a reasoning for it. And then you should describe in the discussion chapter what is the significance of your research work or the findings, what does it indicate, and how it can be applied further for social benefit or benefits in the particular research area or subject. So that means overall implication of the outcome of your result and how it can be extended further in future for further studies, and how it can be finally beneficial for extending the understanding of the subject, or it may have direct application to the field, or it may have direct application to the society. That must have to be mentioned. So that will depend upon the type of research that you are conducting. When you are conducting applied research like health research, I think it is always implied in the actual uses. Either the results may be beneficial for the future workers to upgrade the knowledge and understanding in the particular subject, or maybe a new process or method may be developed which may be applicable for research and for diagnosis, or if it is a treatment method, then it will be applicable to the society, or if it is a product, then it can have commercial value. All these things are to be described in detail. Then also you should mention what are the limitations of your study. It is again one controversial point. Most of the newcomers in this field think that if I mention my limitation of your study, that will be counted as weaknesses of my research, and therefore my paper may not be accepted. It is not so. Rather, if you understand your limitations in terms of the approach, strategy of sampling, or maybe the methods that you have followed, then if you mention it in the paper, then the reviewer will understand that you know what are the limitations of your study, and you have already conducted the work by limiting the effect of those limitations on the study. So if you do not mention that, then they will always say that these methods are obsolete methods or old methods. They have been already replaced by some newer methods which are more appropriate and more accurate. Why did you need to follow that? So you must have to always mention the limitations. It is always better. So always you are to highlight the major findings of the study and explain the meaning and importance of your findings, and then compare and contrast your findings with those of other published works. And as I say, weaknesses or limitations or assumptions of your study should be always mentioned. And ultimately, in the closing chapter, in some of the research journals, it is needed to summarize that means overall results and discussion part of your paper. So if it is not a different section in the paper, then also as a small summary in 2-3 lines, you should mention at the end of the discussion what is the take-home message from the particular research that you have conducted. That should indicate the importance of the work by setting applications, recommendations, and implications. Be clear, concise, and objective in describing your results. As I already said, your result section is the heart of your paper, and therefore, every reviewer usually gives more importance in studying the result section before accepting or rejecting a particular paper presented for publication to the journal. So lead your reader through your story by writing direct, concise, and clear sentences. Don't write very long sentences, complex sentences. Make it very simple so that everybody can understand well. Then comes making a revision. After the draft is ready, first draft is ready, then you can sit down for a revision. First, we should go for a macro structure revision. Whether the entire structure or the flow of the material in the write-up is appropriate or not in terms of its organization, content, and flow. Then after, if you find that the structure is okay, all the different sections are already mentioned well and included all the important findings, then you should go for microstructure level revision, which includes individual words, sentence structure, grammar, punctuation, and spelling. So normally it is better to always find your own errors, because we know what are our common errors. Many people used to have common errors in writing, and if we can understand and identify our own common errors, then always do a targeted search for them. And print a double space copy so that you can write between the lines while revising it. Some important points. First one is, no sentence should be started with a figure or an abbreviation. If it is to be written with an abbreviation or a figure, it should not be in numericals. but it should be in words. So 22 samples were taken. So 22 you can write in words, not as figure or numerical. So similarly, if you start with an abbreviation, it should be written in full. Then sentences should be short and simple, as I already said, and multiple references when we cite within bracket, within parentheses. Then all the references should be arranged chronologically in the chronological order of year of publication, not in alphabetical order. This is a common mistake done by most of the authors. It should not be arranged in alphabetical order, but it should be arranged in chronological order. Then you should follow the specific citation style that is prescribed by the particular journal. All journals do not follow the same style, but most of the journals, particularly from the health sector, including veterinary health, animal health, they used to follow the AMA citation style or Vancouver style. I will just explain these two styles very briefly so that you can understand. AMA or Vancouver styles are almost similar. There is having only one single difference, but almost they are same. AMA stands for American Medical Association. They have developed it first, and then it is being followed in USA mostly, and also in Indian journals or most of the international journals related to human or animal health. So in this case, write the references with an Arabic number 1 to 3 in brackets after the citation. After you make the sentence statement, then you write within bracket by numbering. From first reference onwards, you should start writing 1, 2, 3, 4. If there are more than one, if there are two, you can use the two and use a comma between them, 2, 3, 3, 4, like that. Or if it is more than 2, then you can write 2, 3, 4, and 8, like that. Then you need to give a reference even when the author's name is stated in the sentence. Many a times this is a mistake done. Even if the author's name is mentioned in the text, you should also use the reference number in the particular paragraph or the write-up. Then while preparing the reference list, many a times we use the term reference. Sometimes in some journals it is referred to as bibliography. We need to understand what is the difference between bibliography and reference. Actually, although they are used synonymously, they do have a basic difference. A reference means a list of the citations that have been included in the text in the particular, so to say, body of the paper, body of the manuscript. Whatever references that we have mentioned in the body of the manuscript in text, that should find a place in reference list. But in bibliography, you may include some other references which are not cited in the text, but they are something else. Normally, bibliography word is more appropriate while writing popular articles or essays, because in essays and popular articles, normally we do not cite references in the text, but we can cite the references which have been used for writing the particular manuscript at the end in the form of bibliography. Then it is more appropriate, because bibliography may include the citation of references which are mentioned in the text in the body of the paper, or maybe something else which is not finding a place in the text, but they have been referred while writing the particular topic. And then while writing the reference list, if a paper is written by more than 6 authors, in the AMA or Vancouver style, you need not mention surname of all of them. You should list only first 6 authors' surname and the first names, and then followed by FL and co-workers. So up to 6 worker you should mention. And the basic difference between the two, as I have shown here, while citing a journal article in the reference, in the first AMA style, it is written like this: the author's name without comma and full stop between author surname and first author. Surname should come first, then first name of the authors or second name of the authors without giving any comma or stop. Then comma between 2 authors, and then title of the article, then abbreviated title of the journal. In case of AMA style, abbreviated title of the journal, say for example, Indian Journal of Medical Science or Indian Journal of Medical Research. So you can write in J MAD REF or Indian J MAD REF. These are standard abbreviations. and then year of publication, volume, within bracket the issue number, no gap between the volume and issue. Similarly, then 1 colon, then complete page number, dash to dash, 5 to 7, 23 to 24, like that. Then if there is a DOI, that means if it is an open access journal in online mode, then you should mention DOI. If it is only a printed journal, then you need not mention DOI. There is no question of DOI. But in the AMA style, the journal name should be given in the italics letters. It should be in italics. But Vancouver style is almost same, but here the journal name is not given in italics, but it is even written in abbreviated form without italicizing it. So that is the only difference. Otherwise, it is almost same. Then there are many other styles which are followed in different journals. Say APA style is one, that is American Psychological Association style. It is normally being followed in social sciences or humanities, in art subjects, not in medical science or other science subjects. Then Chicago style is another, Harvard style is another. But I should mention that although APA style is mostly followed in humanities journals internationally, globally, but in most of the Indian journals, even with health research, we used to see that APA format is normally followed. So like this, if there is one author, Goswami 2012, Rahman et al. 2017, Borayan Das 2014, like that, and the reference is to find a place in the text like this. So this is the common style followed in most of the Indian journals, whether it is a science journal, health journal, or humanities journal, that does not arise. But clearly stating that AMA style or Vancouver style is more popular internationally in most of the health journals, both in human health and animal health. Then comes plagiarism checking. So nowadays, it is very important to go for plagiarism check of our manuscript. If it is not checked, if there are certain borrowed text without giving proper mention in the reference section or without citing the references, then it is likely that in that context, the reviewers may reject the paper or the editor may reject the paper while they will be finding the plagiarism in the literature. So there are many online and offline tools available. Most of them are, of course, proprietary in nature. You need to purchase them by paying a lot of money. So most of the very good plagiarism softwares like Turnitin or Authenticate are the proprietary softwares, and you need to pay several lakhs of rupees to purchase them. So it is always appropriate to purchase them at the organization level, and it should be made available through the library to the students and the faculty. That is the best way. So in our university, we have already have the license of software for Turnitin for I think 2,000 users, and that is being used, but it is very costly. But if you want to have a check prior to submission without having checked by the proper plagiarism software, you can also use some downloadable or online freely accessible software like Dupli Checker. I find Dupli Checker is very good in detecting the plagiarism. It is almost equivalent, around 90% equivalent to the Turnitin or some type of proprietary software. But only limitation is that it can check only 1,000 word text at a time. So your manuscript has to be uploaded several times, part by part, so that to check. That is the only labor that you should do. But that is a good software. That is available free of cost. Dupli Checker. This is the URL or the link www.duplichecker.com. Similarly, Grammarly is another online tool. Grammarly.com. This is also having another advantage. It does not only check the plagiarism, but also it checks the grammatical error and sentence framing error. It will indicate where there are grammatical errors, spelling errors, as well as the sentence framing errors. And it will give you some suggestions to improve your text. So it is always advisable for a person who is not having the proprietary software for plagiarism detection or grammar detection. Always go for downloading Grammarly, or you can contribute or subscribe to it. The subscription fee is also only around 1,000 rupees per user per month. So if you pay around 10 to 12,000 rupees per year, that is sufficient to get Grammarly downloaded to your laptop. So, but it is only for one user. So Grammarly is very good, and I normally advocate use of Grammarly in the finding the grammatical errors as well as for checking the plagiarism. And to avoid plagiarism, always it is better to use a quote mark when you are that means exactly copying a text and repeating it in your manuscript. Verbatim, in toto, if you are replicating, then it should be kept within inverted comma and immediately the reference should be cited. Paraphrasing in another way to avoid plagiarism, that means you should try to change the text of the sentences by using your own words while borrowing some text from others. So you should not use the same text, but you should try to understand by reading again and again, and you should make changes by paraphrasing. That means many phrases of 5 to 7 words may be changed together, because most of the softwares will find plagiarism by detecting 3 words at a time in a row in the text that is duplicating from some other published text. So to avoid that, paraphrasing is another method to avoid. Then summarizing is another. That means without borrowing text, if you read the paper or the abstract or summary of the paper, understand it, then you start writing in your own writing without looking into the text again, then it is always better because you will be writing in your own language. And one must recognize or realize that an original writing consists of thinking through ideas and expressing them in your own way. And in that case, if you are writing it in your own, there is no question of plagiarism. Even without plagiarism check, you can submit the paper if you are confident enough that you have not borrowed any text from any other paper. Always acknowledge the original source of idea, data, or text. When paraphrasing, use your own words and always cite references appropriately. Many a times people do not cite references appropriately. They give some false references also. In many papers, you will find. If you want to cross-check, you will not find that reference. They simply mention it, but originally their publication is missing. So that is a very, very unethical behavior. And that kind of unethical behavior, if it is detected, I think nowadays under the plagiarism detection software, this can be detected. And recently, the University Grants Commission has developed a modality for even punishing the authors and the, so to say, guides or mentors of the students indulging in plagiarism in writing a manuscript. So the punishment has been prescribed from, that means the stopping of increment up to dismissal, depending upon the repetition of the same crime. So we should be more careful nowadays in avoiding plagiarism. Then for writing, Grammarly can help, as you say. Similarly, another software can be helpful. That is called WordTune, WORDTUNE. You can download it into your computer, and this is also freely accessible. And this can also help you in just giving the shape to your manuscript so that it is acceptable to the reviewer. Then another AI tool has come up along with Microsoft, that is called Cider AI, that also can be downloaded and can be added to the Edge. That is your Windows Explorer, the Internet Explorer in the Microsoft, and then that can be used. It's a very good software that can also help you in guiding you in correcting the text as well as making summary and other, so to say, changes to the text. Remember, having 5 to 7 drafts is a norm usually. An expert writer also would normally prepare 5 to 7 drafts, rectify them, revise them several times, then only finally they submit it. And after submitting also, the reviewers may find fault with you, and they may also advise you how to improve upon and what are the limitations of your study. Everything has to be, the feedback that we get from the reviewers should be studied well, and we should improve upon the manuscript and then resubmit again. And even after publishing 189 journals during my career in the last 40 years, I am not confident enough to say that if I write something, it will be immediately accepted by a paper. No, nobody can claim that because there may be errors in it, there may be scope of improving it. So that is usually found out by the peer reviewers, and the reviewers will come up with their suggestions to make it better, and we should accept it and improve upon the manuscript and then resubmit it again. There are many apps nowadays available in the internet which can be used for choosing a research journal for publication. This is another important point when people used to confuse. After writing a manuscript draft, where to submit it? Because choosing the journal is very, very critical. And for that, nowadays, there are many, so to say, online tools that some of them can be downloaded also. Trinka is one AI-powered tool that will match your manuscript based on its abstract. That means if you upload the abstract, depending upon the abstract, it will find out the journals which are going to publish, likely to publish your publication. Then it will give you the suggestion. These are the list of journals. You can choose one by one. And based on the top priority, you can submit one after the other. Maybe 2 or 3 may be rejecting you at the beginning. Ultimately, you will be successful. My recent publication has come up in a journal with 5.9 interfactor, but that has to be revised for 4 times. That was rejected 3 times. Initially, that was rejected 3 times by 3 different journals. Then 4th journal accepted it with 4 revisions. So it may take 1 year to 1.5 year time to publish your article in a very, very important coveted journal of high standard. So you should have the patience, and you should not jump on in publishing it in pirated journals. So there are many other softwares available: Elsevier Journal Finder, Web of Science Journal Finder, Quilly Journal Finder, and Zane, Z-A-N-E. This is also another tool that finds journals by analyzing text from your abstract. So Trinka and Zane are very useful because they are not limited to a particular publisher. But Elsevier, Web of Science, or Quilly has got limited access to publishers. Then always try to avoid the predatory journals. But how you know the predatory journals? In 2010, actually, a list was published for the first time by a librarian from that means University of Colorado, Denver. He was Jeffrey Bill, and therefore this list is called Bill's list of predatory journals. He listed all predatory journals of the world, but unfortunately, many of the publishers came against him, and they filed cases in different courts in different countries. And finally, Bill's, so to say, the employers have warned him, you stop publishing your list, otherwise you will be dismissed from your service. And finally, in 2017 January, Bill shut down his blog and removed all its content, citing pressure from his employer. So therefore, it is very difficult now to find out the predatory journals. But of course, the old versions of Bill's list are available in the internet. You can download them. Then last one, what I'm going to tell you is what is the impact factor of publication. And impact factor always matters while deciding about the journal. More the impact factor, more value will be your publication, and likely that you will be having more citations in less period of time. As you know that the Lancet is having the highest impact factor as on today. One publication in Lancet is equivalent to 103.5 international impact factor. No other journals is having that. So in Indian journals, the impact factor is very low, and we have many publications in India which are not having international impact factor even. It is 0. So it is always better to have publication in good impact factor journals. Impact factor usually refers to the citations of the publications of the journal in the last 2 years. Suppose we want to find out the impact factor of the journal in 2018, we have to go back to the publications in the journal in 2016 and 17, and the average number of times the articles published in last 2 years were cited by index journals divided by the total number of citations, citable items, total number of publications that have been published last 2 years. That is A by B will determine the impact factor. There are many other methods that is finding standards of journals. Many other journal impact factor algorithms have now emerged, like JCR, CIMAGO, Chinese Academy of Science Journal Ranking, Chinese Computer Federation, Web of Science Citation, and in India, agricultural scientists under the Indian Agricultural Science Academy, Indian Academy of Agricultural Sciences, have developed another impact factor analysis that is called NAS factor, National Academy of Agricultural Sciences factor. So with this, I conclude my speech.